Okay, good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Antoine Calab. I'm the Associate Director of the Nature Conservation Center. I would like to thank you all for joining us in person and online. On behalf of the Nature Conservation Center's director team and the university, I would like to welcome you all on our campus in Beirut in a discussion that will be reaching today Palestine, Jordan, France, and many other countries. We began our involvement with the Materials Network a year ago in a partnership with RED Agency to study the effect of climate change on community-based tourism in Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. I realize today that our experience on this project has been nothing short of a hike in its own right. Over the past year, we went through many ups and downs, discovered breathtaking places, reconnected with our land, ate a lot of good food, and gained new friends by the end of the journey. For more than 150 years, AUB has served as a beacon for informed and free speech in the MENA and the Levant region. And while the report presented today does not lack the scientific evidence to support the conclusions in it, we could not be prouder to have rooted our work in a series of dialogue with a variety of actors, including the local Mukhtar, women entrepreneurs, hiking guides, youth activists, high school teachers, resilient farmers, first responders, who spend every single day at the forefront of climate change and nature conservation, whose combined knowledge of biodiversity, cultural heritage, food systems, and nature-based solutions is worth countless academic publications. This approach would not have been successful without contribution of dozens of individuals and organizations, so I hope you will bear with me while I list them. First, I'd like to thank the members of the Material Network, notably Camille Marconnet and Afrat, who diligently administered the funds and the entire process. I'd like to thank the three trail associations, Palestine Heritage Trail, notably Samah and George, who helped us collect fascinating field data from Palestine, the Jordanian Trail Association, notably Ali and Warid, and the Lebanon Mountain Trail Association, notably Omar, Rashad, Julie, and Ranwa. I'd like to also thank the affiliated and supporting groups, Tetractis, Subul, Palestinian Vision, the generous donors who strongly believe in the Metro Trail's vision, notably Madame Simonet, Monsieur Butin, Madame Poumonti from the Agence Française de Développement and Oxfam, and finally, the wonderful research team, which I had the pleasure to lead over the past year. Our partners at Agence RED, represented by Louise Taylor, and the NCC team, Dr. Joanna Dumar, Dr. Alan Dow, Leila Rossam Awad, who's done a fascinating job for the past year and for this event, Salma Ghanim, Anna Hurani, Ghada Jabran, Ali Turk, Dr. Alexi Bahnan from the Earth Sciences Department, who helped us with the maps, and everyone who contributed to the research from the community representatives and experts. Thank you for your patience. We have an impressive lineup of speakers today, not counting myself. So welcome again on campus, and please enjoy the event. Thank you all.
Good morning, everyone. What if we told you that a network of Mediterranean trails did come to life, actually, thanks to the generous contribution of AFD, and thanks to the collaboration of 5 partners, the Palestinian Heritage Trail, Jordan Trail Association, Lebanon Mountain Trail, Afrat, and Tetractis. On behalf of the 5 partners, I'm very pleased to welcome you in the first MTN webinar. I would like to address a big thank you to the AUB Nature Conservation Center for hosting this event, both on campus and online. Dr. Yasser, Antoine, Leila, Ghada, Anna, and all NCC team, your collaboration and effort in organizing this event are deeply appreciated. Looking forward to an engaging discussion and a productive exchange on this critical and timely topic. Thank you all for being here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Omar Saer, the Executive Director of the Lebanon Mountain Trail Association. On behalf of the Mediterranean Trails Network, I'm truly delighted to welcome you to our very first hybrid event, co-organized with the Nature Conservation Center at the American University of Beirut. It's a pleasure to see so many passionate individuals gathered both in person and online to explore a topic that is as urgent as it is inspiring: trail transformation in the Levant, understanding the impact of climate change and community-based tourism. This event marks a significant milestone for the Mediterranean Trails Network, which is a young but ambitious initiative that seeks to unite trail communities and organizations across the Mediterranean. MTN's, or Mediterranean Trails Network, MTN's mission is to represent the major hiking trails of this diverse region and to support the economic vitality of local communities by preserving their cultural and environmental heritage, while enabling them to adapt to the realities of climate change. The Mediterranean is a region of breathtaking contrasts: coastal paths with sweeping sea views, rugged mountain trails leading to hidden villages, desert landscapes, and ancient historical sites. Hiking here is not just a physical journey, but a deep cultural immersion. And yet, these trails and the communities that steward them are increasingly vulnerable to the effects of a changing climate. Over the past 2 years, MTN partners have engaged in rigorous research to build strategies grounded in science. We are especially grateful to the Nature Conservation Center at AUB for their invaluable collaboration in studying climate change impacts on the Jordan Trail, the Lebanon Mountain Trail, and the Palestinian Heritage Trail. This partnership exemplifies the kind of cross-border, interdisciplinary cooperation that is essential for meaningful progress. As one of the 4 regional hubs of the World Trails Network, alongside the American Trails, the Asian Trails, and European Trails, the Mediterranean Trails Network is unique. Our region is a mosaic of languages, histories, and ecosystems, all connected by the sea and by a shared commitment to sustainable tourism and community resilience. We at the Lebanon Mountain Trail Association are very proud to be a founding member of the World Trails Network back in 2012, and of the Mediterranean Trails Network today. Our journey has been one of collaboration, learning, and deep commitment to the values that unite trail communities across borders. Before we begin, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to the Agence Française de Développement, whose support has been instrumental in the creation and growth of this network, and to the founding partners of MTN, Afrat, Tetractis, the Jordan Trail, and the Palestinian Heritage Trail. We are also deeply grateful to AUB for hosting this event, and to the NCC, Nature Conservation Center team, along with the technical team of MTN for the marvelous work they have done so far. Thank you all for being here, and wish you a fruitful and engaging session. Thank you very much.
Okay, so this is a presentation that was prepared to summarize the study that was done over the past year. So it was, I'm presenting on behalf of myself and Dr. Joanna Dumar. And again, Leila helped us a great deal collecting all the info and putting them on the slides. So there were 2 projects that we worked on related to this, to the MedTrails network and the issue of climate change. So the first one is technical assistance to the MedTrails network in analyzing climate change impact, adaptation for the Mediterranean trails, and community-based tourism. But also we worked especially with the Palestine Heritage Trail Association on the assessment of the effect of climate change on community-based tourism, including agritourism in Palestine, Jordan, and Lebanon. Essentially, there were 2 questions that we were trying to answer. How is climate change transforming community-based tourism around the MedTrails network? So this is the tourism that is connected directly or indirectly to trail activities. And how can the MedTrails network enhance the adaptive capacity of tourism communities? You can see that, this is the map regrouping all of this, these three trails. And we were having a discussion about it, Layla and I, a few days ago. And you would not think, for example, that, when you look at this map, you might ask yourself where the country borders are, the names of certain villages. But I think in the context of the current Middle East, where, borders are changing and everything, it's important to know that these trails will not be moving anytime. And I think we should invest more effort into connecting them and filling the gaps between them. Hopefully, any changes coming to the Middle East will even empower the MedTrails network and make these connections more successful, sustainable, and rooted in peace and culture. But this is effectively, to go back to the presentation, this is the geographic scope of the trail. In each country, we had a focus on on one village. So in Lebanon, there was a case study on Baskinta. In Jordan, there was the case study on Ajloun, which is about 2 hours north of Amman, more or less. And in Palestine, we worked on Ariha or Jericho Valley. This was a study rooted in participation, in science, and in input from all the stakeholders. And our insights, which we will present at the end, are very much, they come from desk reviews, participatory workshops, and key informed interviews. So the connection between desk reviews, the intersection between desk reviews and key informed interviews, this is, with experts, this is where you get the hardcore science. When you overlap the desk reviews and the participatory workshop, you get a lot of information about localization. What is, this is very much the local perception, the local disparities between the different contexts. And when you combine at the end of the day, somewhat subjective and objective input of key informed interviews and experts with participatory workshops, you get something that sometimes we tend to underestimate, which is perceptions. And perceptions are very important, especially in topics related to how people are experiencing climate change. These are some pictures about the workshops that were done. And this is where I also would like to thank the Palestine Heritage Trail. Obviously, we could not go to Palestine ourselves, and hopefully we'll be able to do that soon. But we actually trained a team of researchers based in Palestine on how to conduct these these participatory workshops. And they became our sort of ambassadors and data collectors, and they were able to conduct these workshops with the local communities and send us back the data to be integrated in the report as if we had collected it ourselves. And we were very grateful for that. So which means that we had field original primary data from Palestine, Jordan, and Lebanon. So what's happening in these three countries? When we talk about climate change, we could talk about the economy, we could talk about geopolitics, we could talk about environment or climatic factors, but effectively, we were focusing on irregular precipitation, which effectively really does affect access to water. High heat, which brings its own set of course, circumstances, and extreme weather events, in the sense where this is where we primarily look at events that threaten our infrastructure. When it comes to regular precipitation, if you want to go into the numbers, so we are experiencing, as you may know, perhaps winters of more or less the same duration, but the rainfall is concentrated in just a few days rather than being spread evenly across the month of winter. And this is a very big problem because our soil cannot absorb them. We cannot store the water for summer. In Lebanon, for example, our mountains are our water tanks, our water reservoirs. So we count on winter to slowly fill them up, so that in the summer, we don't have water issues like we're experiencing right now. And this is not happening. So we have very high intensity precipitations in Lebanon, to a lesser degree, but in Jordan and Palestine. They're also low in frequency. So we have less rain days, even if these rain days are more intense. And in Lebanon, so in combination with the low intensity and frequency, low availability of rain, and the increase in temperatures, we are suffering from a decrease in snow cover, which means that, again, snow plays a very important role in filling up our water reservoirs in the mountains, and this is not happening. When it comes to high heat, as you're noticing, we are experiencing increasingly high heat above 30, sometimes even above 35 degrees. We are experiencing heat waves as phenomena, and projections say that we'll have an increase of temperature between 1.4 Celsius to 0.5 by 2100, which is a significant threat to biodiversity and the ability of species to survive. Extreme weather events. Extreme weather events in Lebanon have risen from 4 to 25 incidents per year, spread across the territory. But of course, where infrastructure is less developed, it means that the impact of these events would be much greater. In Jordan, there's an increased risk of floods and dust storms. It's leading to some casualties in some cases, as we'll see. And in Palestine, there's an increase in flash floods and occurrence of storms. So what does this mean to us? This is not just an issue of weather. This is not, the issue of I cannot go ski this year. I cannot, I'll have more time to spend on the beach. It's a bit more than this. So on the environmental side, as you're seeing the past few years, our wildfires have increased. There's a biodiversity loss, water scarcity, there's a desertification, pest outbreaks. If you talk to farmers, they will give you a lot more details about this, and soil erosion. On the economic aspect, the agricultural impact is leading to delayed and reduced agricultural yield. We have less tourists in some cases, damage to infrastructure, job loss, reduced animal production, and higher energy consumption. So this is where we're also entering a loop. The weather, we have warmer days, so we use more energy, we contribute to climate change. So it's important to also take this into account. And finally, on the social side, let me just move this. Obviously, there's an increase in health risk, reduced productivity, food insecurity, degraded livelihoods, conflict over resources, loss of heritage. And it's important to know that as someone who comes from a disaster studies background, what we know for a fact is that disasters eventually affect the most vulnerable in our society. So when we talk about the societal impact, we are fortunately, it's very much the most vulnerable, people who suffer from the most inequalities, who feel the grunt or who bear the grunt of this impact. The main, I would say, threats in Palestine, Jordan, and Lebanon. So in Palestine, there's an increase in saltwater intrusion threatening agriculture production, access to water, and so on. In Jordan, as I mentioned before, we are seeing human casualties because of these flash floods. And Lebanon, there's a shorter snow residence leading to various economic, environmental, and societal impacts. So as I mentioned before, existing inequalities and vulnerabilities, they do translate in terms of how we live through climate change. And we're not all living the same experience of climate change. I myself, as a man, 32-year-old man living in Beirut, who is more or less, in a good situation, am not experiencing the same impact that a woman farmer in some rural area might be experiencing. And this is for different reasons. Some are geographic, but also throughout our research, we discovered that the gender aspect plays a significant role in the diversity of experiences. In Palestine, for example, we noticed that there's a low rate of women participation in labor force, but however, they are a much more dynamic segment of the population, which means that the response to climate change also can be different. However, the fact that they are less active economically makes them less protected in terms of absorbing potential shocks from disasters and climate events. In Jordan, it was very impressive to see the level of entrepreneurship in the women, which is something that stood out from the men who have much more traditional jobs. And this level of entrepreneurship is actually quite promising because it means that you can find local solutions to local problems with the local knowledge that exists and the dynamism that exists. However, there was a lack of awareness when it comes to climate risks, especially amongst women more than men. And we also noticed that the wages were quite lower and there was higher unemployment rates among women. In Lebanon, we found that in the case of Baskinta, where we were conducting our study, there wasn't any clear disparities in decision-making, but there was a clear advanced level of climate awareness, and especially much more eco-sensitive priorities. When we would run our workshops with the men, they would talk about priorities related to infrastructure, to economic growth, even at the expense of the environment. However, it was the women who eventually said that the only way we can grow our village and sustain our way of life and provide jobs is through the conservation of the local biodiversity and transferring this knowledge to the future generations. So this was not just one woman versus one man. No, these were systematically the groups in the various workshops that we conducted. And this was the main reason why we conducted workshops with women separately from the workshops with men, because it helped us understand these disparities. So after we conducted the workshops, we looked at the literature, we did our interviews with the experts. The key findings were that water is the most pressing concern. I think we're hearing this increasingly more in the news or wherever we're exposed, but this was also confirmed as part of our study. We live in the same region, but we have very different experiences. And it's not just because of different weather events or climate events, but the occupation in Palestine, for example, brings its own sets of circumstances, its own inequalities, and its own inability, for example, to prioritize climate actions when they are living through very different circumstances. The war in Lebanon, for example, also, which happened, is a barrier ahead of climate adaptation. So how do you discuss climate adaptation and mitigation in these circumstances? This was something that we had to learn as we conducted the study. As I mentioned before, climate change is exacerbating existing vulnerabilities. So if you want to understand how climate change materializes, look at how your current society is structured, look at how your inequalities are spread, and you'll be able to understand a bit how people will live through climate change. Weak infrastructure, as always, is a big barrier to resilience. If we do not have resilient infrastructure that's capable of resisting to the climate impact, we are never going to go out of this loop where we are living through an event and always trying to rebuild or recover. Local resilience enablers are related to communities. Communities play an important role in their ability to stay in their land, to grow the economy, the local economy in their land, most importantly in a sustainable way. And finally, there are layers of barriers to climate resilience. It's not a clear-cut, very simple obstacles. There are very different layers. They depend on the context, on the local economy, on the society. So when it came to our recommendations at the end, I only have a few slides left. When it came to our recommendations, we framed our intervention framework around three main pillars. So first, awareness, second, development, and third, research. When it comes to awareness, and this is where we go back to what role can the Met Trail or the hiking trails and the network, what role can they play? We believe it's important to enhance climate awareness amongst hikers and the various actors, but also important to attract strategic investments to support community resilience. Because if we do not make the community around hiking trails resilient, unfortunately, we will not be able to sustain and maintain the trails. So these are interconnected. We also need to look a bit further ahead. We need to work on development. We need to improve infrastructure. We need to, when we design infrastructure, it has to take into account climatic threats. It's no longer just, the classic physics that we know. We need to take into account extreme weather events and so on. We need targeted investments for land restoration. Hiking is inherently based in the context of the land and the territory, and we need to not only maintain, but we need to restore lost land, which is something that's increasing with climate change, and we need to empower women to enable resilience. This is, we came to the conclusion that women are the safekeepers of the land, of the communities. If they are sidelined, if they are marginalized, then you can consider that the entire community will be suffering from this impact. And finally, at the end of the day, we need to root this in evidence. We need to keep working with academic partners, with researchers, with scientists, without dismissing the view of the local community. but we need to develop and share, I stress on sharing, localized data to guide adaptation measures. So when it comes to the issue of localized data, for example, the idea would be, the objective would be to enhance localized knowledge. Localized knowledge is very important. We cannot take a study on climate change done in the US and expect to benefit from it in the context of a village in Lebanon. We need this localized knowledge, and it works. Nature-based solutions done, extracted from villages, from local communities, have proven themselves for centuries, and they continue to prove themselves. And we need to harness this knowledge. So by conducting localized climate impact studies, involving the local communities in data collection, developing partnerships with research institute, offering adaptation workshops. In Palestine, we discovered a lot of ancestral knowledge. In Jordan, there's a lot of knowledge on how to deal with desertification. In Lebanon, people are starting to learn, how to deal with snow reduction. And we believe, for example, this could be one activity that's worth investing in. Another thing that we'd like to stress is very much community-based land restoration initiatives along the trails. So I'm going to move this. So we expect, an increase in vegetation, enhancing biodiversity, and engaging locals, all of which are essential for successful hiking and development of the trail community. This should be done in collaboration with municipalities, environmental NGOs, the ministry, which I'm also happy to have Dr. Haddad with us representing the Ministry of Tourism, organizing tree planting events with hikers and locals, of course, native tree planting events. We don't want to see, foreign trees filling our forests. And implementing long-term monitoring and maintenance plans. Again, it's not important just to intervene. The importance is to also ensure the sustainability, the monitoring, and the continuous development. Some indicators that we suggest are survival rate for trees, for example, species counts, number of members involved. So if you read through the report, you'll see a lot of similar suggestions with the details, with priorities, with potential actors, and so on. And we really put this report at the disposal of everyone. This is a report that really came from the communities themselves, and we're very grateful to have been able to take this local knowledge and put it in a more formal/academic context. So that's it. Thank you all for the time. I hope I didn't take too long. And أهلا وسهلا.
If I could just invite Lara Callas to join us, please. Thank you. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all. My name is Lisa Jeregian. I'm the editor of Lebanon Traveler. We are a platform that very passionately promotes Lebanon and empowers stakeholders to talk about the incredible projects that are happening across the country. We have a long-standing relationship with the LMTA, and I am so grateful for the invitation to moderate the panel. So thank you, Omar and Rashad. And I'd like to extend my thanks also to the AUB-NCC for the invitation to be here, specifically Antoine and Leila and Lara. So thank you very much for having me. It's also fantastic to see so many of you here to discuss a very valuable, critical topic. I think it's obvious that the NCC has done an incredible amount of research. So we will be discussing the findings, and you will be given the opportunity to ask questions at the end. So please do prepare your questions, because I'm sure the panelists would be more than happy to answer them. On that note, I'd like to introduce, we've already met Antoine, but Antoine is the Associate Director of AUB-NCC and one of the lead authors of the research on the impacts of climate change on community-based tourism in Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Lara Callas, who's a geologist with more than 20 years of experience in environment and natural resources management, with a focus during the last 5 years on land degradation neutrality, land restoration, and sustainable land use planning and practices. Thank you, Lara, for being with us. And we also have 2 guests joining us online. So we have Mr. Hamza Zubeidat, who's the researcher from Palestine. He specializes in Jordan Valley affairs and is an activist on environmental and climate issues. And Hakeem Tamimi, who's the assistant marketing director for European markets and eco and adventure tourism unit, head at the Jordan Tourism Board. He was also one of the founders of the Jordan Trail and Association. So thank you for the 4 panelists for being with us. So on that note, we will start our questions. Just if you'd like to use your mics at any point to intervene. I think we've already heard a lot from Antoine. So we'll start with Lara. Thank you, Lara, for being with us. Lara, much of your work at the UNDP intersects ecosystem restoration and tourism. Could you share how land degradation, wildfires, quarrying, etc., oftentimes induced by mismanagement and inadequate governance is undermining the potential of community-based tourism in Lebanon?
Sure. So just a quick introduction concerning land degradation. So when we talk about land degradation, we are mainly saying that the land has lost its soil cover or its vegetation or both, or it has reduced ecosystem services. It has lost the ecosystem services that the land could provide, the productivity that it can provide. So a lot of man-made practices and sometimes climate change-induced phenomena could affect all these things. And when we talk about community-based tourism, it's tourism mainly that is based on natural and cultural heritage, and the natural heritage and the cultural heritage in local communities is mostly related to nature. So this is why anything that can affect the visual landscape or the land productivity that could contribute to the cultural heritage or to the agricultural heritage, if we can name it, any rural related activity is affected. So definitely tourism, nature-based tourism will be affected. So if there are lack of prevention or firefighting, then wildfires could be very damaging. So if we do not have any preventive actions, we don't have, for example, first responders teams that are equipped and trained. If we have random quarrying, because like in Lebanon, for example, more than 30% of the quarries are in the mountains, especially the high mountains. So we have more than 30% of the quarries located in the high mountains where most of our trails are. So all the community-based tourism are not in the coastal areas. They are located in the rural areas, in the mountains. So this affects a lot. When we talk about, for example, unsustainable agricultural practices, we're talking about lands that are losing their productivity. There are lands that are abandoned from the lack of water, from the lack of proper management for these lands to be productive. So people will not rely on these lands for their livelihoods anymore. So they abandon these lands. And when these lands are abandoned, then definitely it will affect all the dynamics of this sector in the areas, and it will affect the whole value chain. So definitely tourism will be affected, especially community-based tourism, because people go to these villages to see the local traditions, to eat local food, to have local experiences. So definitely all these sectors are affected.
Thank you. I think I would like to move to Hakeem now, if Hakeem is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Hello, Hakeem.
No.
Hakeem, could you tell us a bit about the key challenges that are induced by climate change on internal tourism in Jordan?
So first of all, thank you for this. It's really a breath of fresh air, this research. Antoine, thank you for all the data that you've provided. It's really good to see that a scientific entity is producing this data that will help us all evolve our industry. Regarding your question and following up the same methodology of Mr. Antoine, it's important to know that there is a historical difference between tourism, at least in Jordan, pre and post global digitalization. And how do we want to see the impact of climate change on how was tourism when in the 70s, when say the amount of tourists that would cross by from the West were Orientalists that would pass by, say, 100 a year versus now having data of thousands a day. Back then, the Azraq Oasis was actually an oasis, a lake, and there was a fishing industry around it. And due to the drop in rain precipitation, to be more exact, between the 50s and 60s, we had an average of 160 millimeters annually. Between the 70s and 80s, down to 150, then down to 140, then down to 130. And this year, so far, it's going to be the driest in time than ever. So,
Hakeem, sorry, could I just interject? Would you be able to turn your camera on? Would it be possible,
Sorry,
the video, so that we can see?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
It's okay, my apologies. So yeah, based on that, I could say that, the impact of climate change can be seen on the last 30 years on a scale that it's different, that cannot really be recorded on the last 60 years, if that makes any sense. So in the last 30 years, we can say that we had lakes where we used to run triathlons, say the Ziglab Lake, and that is no longer the case. We cannot run a triathlon there. We need to do normal, it's just a pond, so you can't do a triathlon. And that definitely impacts the hikes, the trails that we do. Some of the most active trails in the early 2000s are no longer attractive because the ponds that we used to have along the way are no longer there. Others completely dried out. When it comes to the actual Jordan Trail, for example, well, the access to water on certain places is no longer available due to the lack of water. Following the comments of the previous panelist, quarries is also an issue, not only in trails, say in climbing. We have developed rock climbing areas that are no longer available because industrialization in quarries literally destroyed the walls where people used to climb. So there are many aspects where climate change is impacting different users of different adventure tourism activities, whether it's hiking or climbing or going into canyons. And definitely we do suffer that impact.
And as someone guiding adventure and trail tourism policies, how is the sector responding to these challenges that you're facing?
So I have to say, there was one comment that was repeated about the casualties due to the increase in precipitation, and this will jump back to it. The reason I bring this up, because this is one of those data that we need to take with a pinch of salt. Traditionally, people who walked around the canyons and hikes, the casualties that we've been having were about hikers that go into canyons when there's rain and flash floods. And the local population is very much aware of what they have. So historically, this was never the case. But now that we have a large amount of tourism going to these canyons, without that historical data knowledge and let's say, traditional knowledge that they have of not going into these areas, we hit these problems. Therefore, in terms of policy, it's important that Jordan has pushed towards furthering the education of the guides that are taking people down to these canyons to mitigate these problems. Unfortunately, when we want to talk about actual actions from a policy point of view towards mitigating dangers of increasing dangers of climate change, not much has been done from a governmental point of view. More is being done from the private sector. At the end of the day, it's the guides that are taking their clients into the canyon, and they are the ones that force either their companies or directly their own clients to say, we're not taking this route anymore. I know you've read about it, but it's not what I used to do. Let's do this one. Or it's dangerous to come from here versus there.
Thank you very much, Hakeem.
Welcome.
We'll come back to you in a short while. And if I could ask Hamza, please, if you could join us, if you could turn your camera on, please.
Oh, yes, of course. I just need some time, please, because I have to be in this position. Sorry for this. It's just
No
because
problem.
of sickness. Thank you.
No problem. We can just speak with you like this. No problem. Hamza, thank you for joining us. Could I pose the same question in terms of the most urgent priority when it comes to climate change and climate justice? What, in your opinion, could you share your insights, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you first for having me, and actually in Palestine, thanks for bringing this important topic back to the table, especially in such difficult and changing times in Palestine and the region. In this context, let me say that whenever we talk about injustice, Palestine always comes to mind as one of the places still suffering under occupation and struggling to build systems that can protect people's dignity and, of course, ensure justice for people. When we talk about the priorities in the context of climate change and the climate justice, we must distinguish between the technical and the human aspects. The essence of climate justice is not only about reducing effects of climate change, but also about ensuring that most vulnerable communities have access to essential services and protection mechanisms. Of course, each country, each community, each region have their own specific circumstances that maybe they can shape its priorities and plans. However, in general, I would say that I believe that because of the situation we live in our region, and Palestine as an example, I would say that we have to connect the struggle for climate justice to the other struggles. Yes, we are specifically here in Palestine, we are under occupation, and maybe talking about climate change and climate justice is a very small topic comparing with the big issues, with the ongoing and daily killing and problems we are facing because of the occupation. But still, we believe that it must be always on the table, because climate justice is fundamentally part of human rights, and personally, and we believe that it is one of the human rights, and it must be always part of the human rights. It also linked to issues of liberation and self-determination, which are, of course, concerns. I mean, in places like Palestine. Second, I believe ensuring the inclusion of participation of local communities, especially those most vulnerable communities. Personally, I witnessed that those people always need protection and empowerment. Climate justice cannot be achieved without making sure that their voices are heard, that they are represented, and they are represented actually on local, national, and of course, global discussion. And the industrialized countries must also acknowledge their responsibility, their historical role in causing environmental damage, and must take responsibility for compensating the communities most affected by climate change. Usually, communities, marginalized communities, and vulnerable communities are the least affecting and making the climate change. That's why there is historical responsibility for these countries. These countries must, I believe, take financial responsibilities as well. And it must be a justice way of, if I can say, distributing or implementing this kind of funding projects, particularly for the benefit of poor and for the poor and marginalized communities, not for industrial corporations. I would like also to say that priority when it comes to climate justice must be given to the groups most affected. I heard in the presentation about some findings out of the research about the women. I can tell you that always, for example, women are the most affected group because of the climate change and in areas when water has become a real problem, women who are taking the responsibility of offering the water, or at least they are the ones who are affected inside the house because they are the ones who are doing usually the work at home. And of course, the farmers who are depending on water, especially in communities, depends on agriculture as a main income resource. Likewise, priority should be given to people who have been denied their right to self-determination and the ability to set their own priorities. Of course, I mean here with the local governments, like other countries, Palestine is part of that, of course, in the internal issues with our own government, but also due to the occupation, where people here, Palestinians, are treated as if we are have no rights. These are some actually general issues I believe must be highlighted. Lisa, thank you.
Thank you, Hamza, very much. You actually highlighted water insecurity, which we were going to talk about, but we will come back to that. Antoine, I'd like to pass the mic over to you, just to tell us a bit about the importance of this research and the role that academic institutions actually play in evidence-based decisions and actions. Can you just enlighten us a bit about that in terms of your thoughts?
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. Of course, I mean, I work at AUB, so I'm going to use the example of AUB, but I really do believe that this applies to universities in our region. I was actually in a discussion a few months ago about how universities in the global south, they're also part of this ecosystem that compensates for any particular gaps we have left by our government and so on. And so having universities that are proactive, that are engaging, that go to the field and that try to go beyond the traditional academic sphere, I believe this is how universities can have a real impact. And then the word impact sometimes is taken for granted. And I believe we need to redefine what impact means. That being said, I do believe that the most important thing that universities can provide is being a space, and a space to have an informed dialogue. Dialogue by itself is nice, but it's not enough. Information or evidence and science by themselves are also not enough. We need to be able to discuss in a safe space scientific notions so that we link them to specific actions on the ground, to specific experiences, to perceptions. Perceptions, at the end of the day, they might not emanate from scientific background, but they are a key factor in decision making. And in Lebanon, whether it's regarding environmental or climate issues, our experiences or our delays or gaps, they come from bad decision making. So we need to try and host these dialogues. We need to be able to gather different actors, whether it's the community, whether it's the government, whether it's the private sector, municipalities, NGOs. This is a space where we can get everyone in the same room. We can talk about the different concerns. And, there's always going to be one voice in the room that says, well, the science says this. How far are we from what the science says? Does this make sense to you? Because the science doesn't always provide a full picture. If someone is not agreeing with the science, there could be several reasons, but it's important also to take them into account because they might have something that the science has not discovered yet. So by playing this role and bringing people together and having these discussions, I believe universities and academic centers can play an important role. Another thing that academic centers like the Nature Conservation Center brings is multidisciplinarity, right? I mean, look at the research team. I myself come from a economic development policy and disaster management. Dr. Alandau comes from business, entrepreneurship, and marketing. Dr. Joanna is a geologist specialized in water. Selma comes from an education and public health background. Leila comes from a forestry background. Louise comes from a communication background from our partner in Red. Being in a place where you can get all these people working on the same project, I believe is really special. Because at the end of the day, our problems, they're not unidisciplinary. We don't suffer from an economic problem. From one, my problem is not the GDP itself. It's the series of decisions and contexts that led us to particular issues that eventually, because our problems are multidisciplinary, our solutions need to be multidisciplinary. And I believe this is also something academic centers and universities can contribute to.
Just as a side question, in terms of the research, the very comprehensive research that was conducted, what was the biggest challenge, would you say, that you faced? This is part one, and the other part was, what was the most surprising outcome from the research? I'm sorry, these are off. These questions were not. I did not give you these.
No, I mean it's fine. I'm trying to prioritize the challenges. No, because there was the day we left, Leila and I, to go and do data collection in Jordan was September 23rd, which is the day the Israeli aggression fully began. So we boarded the plane at 6 p.m. And then I was supposed to come back for one night, then go to a conference in Ethiopia, come back for one night, then go to a workshop in Cyprus with non-MEA flights. So, for example, I was stuck outside for 3 weeks. So this was also a particular moment, but we still did the data collection and we managed to deliver the project. So this was the main challenge that comes to mind. Another challenge was, I would say, the workshops with men were sometimes, they were a bit difficult because you find that at some point, it's important to admit that sustainability and environmental or nature conservation, they do have an economic cost and they do come at the expense of short-term, at least, economic growth. And for some people, which they may have a very legitimate reason to, but this may seem like an absurd or they might resist the idea. So trying to have a conversation about what we perceive as a priority and what they perceive as a priority, I would say we had to be very diplomatic on how to talk about these. Another challenge which is also coming up is with Palestinian partners. How do we bring up the notion of climate change in the context of, the circumstances? But they're not just challenges, they're lessons, because they are the reality on the ground. So eventually these made their way to the report and they are part of our findings.
And as I mentioned, the most surprising outcome from the research that you did, what were you most surprised about?
I personally, when we first started on the project, I was not 100% sure to which degree the communities are connected or aware or even care about the trails. And it turns out that it is inherent to not just their annual activities, it's inherent to their daily life. And there was never a point where we had trouble explaining why they should work on conserving the ecosystem around the trail. And I was expecting to get a bit of resistance around this because some might perceive trails as a leisure activity or touristic or sometimes even a privileged or luxury activity. And so trails are community-based tourism, and there's not, at least for the villages themselves, there's really no need to raise awareness around it, I think. And I think also the 3 trail associations had been working on this for a while, and I think it was nice to see it succeed.
Thank you. Lara, I'll come back to you. So we spoke about degradation previously. So let's talk about restoration and how that's helping rebuild the connection between land and livelihoods. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Okay, so definitely land restoration. Land is directly linked to people's livelihood. It has been like this for millions of years. So when the people are no longer connected to the land or no longer working their land, then their livelihood is affected. And actually this year's theme for the World Desertification Day was land restoration and livelihood. So this connection was really the big theme of UNCCD for the World Desertification Day. And they have chosen the LDN project, our project at UNDP, to be one of the case studies to be showcased on their website during that day, to show how the interventions in land restoration is improving people's livelihood. So definitely when you restore the land or rehabilitate the land, whether it is an agricultural land, an ecosystem by itself, a forest, a rangeland, or you rehabilitate a quarry, for example. So all these activities will directly affect the people that are working the land. Either, for example, if we're talking about forests, if the forest becomes productive, then you will have more jobs for people that are using the forest product. If we're talking about rangelands or pastures, so if you restore the rangelands, then you will have more herds and all the value chain related to dairy products and meat and herders will be affected. If we're talking about agricultural lands, it's the same, definitely. And all this, when you restore the whole nature and all these ecosystems, of course, tourism and specifically nature-based tourism will be directly affected. You will have more jobs created around these lands, whether as guides, whether as accommodation or food services, any tourism service provider. So all the people will be really directly affected. This is not an indirect effect. It is really a direct effect. And we have proven it throughout our project, which was a pilot project in Akkar and Jbeil, and we have monitored and followed up really how every pilot restoration, every activity has affected the livelihoods of the local people.
And from a Lebanon-specific viewpoint, what is the greatest priority here in terms of land restoration? Where is the biggest concern in Lebanon?
In land restoration, before saying which is, I mean, the quarrying sector is a big issue because we have lots of quarries that have really, this is the highest level of degradation because it's like you are removing the soil cover and everything that is below it. So this is a big issue, one big issue. Land restoration, I mean, Lebanon is a small country and it is very diversified. So all the ecosystems are affected, not equally, but it depends on the regions. For example, in some regions you have the forests that are mostly affected, in other regions the rangelands or the agricultural land. So we do not have one priority. The priority is to sustainably manage these lands, to be able to avoid further degradation or any potential degradation, and to be able to introduce practices with people in different sectors to be able to avoid land degradation and to reduce land degradation. Because when you start focusing on these practices and you give people the skills and the know-how and the means to do that, and to show them the benefits that these practices will give to them, then they will definitely shift their practices, shift their activities, their views, their economic activities even, to be able to not reach the point where we have to invest and put money to restore the land, because restoration costs a lot. Even if at the very short term, people cannot see the benefit of switching their practices, but it will definitely cost them less than paying for the restoration of the land.
Question now? I take the question now. Alara, we actually have a question regarding the, if you can have more details on the project that you mentioned, the LDN project. Yeah.
Okay, so the LDN is the Land Degradation Neutrality for Mountain Landscapes in Lebanon. It started in 2020. It is a UNDP project in partnership with the Ministry of Environment. It is funded by Jeff. It works in the mountain areas of Akkar and Jbeil. We have 2 target regions from 800 meters and above, and we worked on forest management, rangeland management, sustainable tourism, quarry rehabilitation, and land use planning. So there are lots of details. I don't know how much time. If you have more specific questions, I can give you more details, because I don't want to take the time to be presenting the project.
Thank you very much. Hamza, I'd like to come back to you for a moment.
Yes, sure.
Could you describe how the so climate change is affecting agritourism, especially in vulnerable areas like the Jordan Valley? So could you describe how these changes are being felt on the ground and what it means for rural tourism and community resilience?
Of course. First of all, the Jordan Valley, it's actually the western part or side or bank of the Jordan River. It's a very big area. It's around 30% of the entire space of the West Bank. It's very fertile land, very rich with water, has very important and historical, religious importance for the Palestinian people because of the Jordan River, where Jesus was baptized. And also we have a lot of Christian religious sites in Jericho and the Jordan Valley area. But unfortunately, due to the climate change and, of course, the Israeli occupation actions against the Palestinian existence, we started to notice recently, especially the recent 15 to 20 years, that the climate change is becoming very serious threat on the lives or the livelihoods of the people in general in the region, but especially in the agritourism and tourism in general, and of course on the lives of the people. I would like to give some examples. There is a very famous type or kind of dates. It's very famous in Palestine, called and only in the Jordan Valley. It's called dates, majhul dates, majhul, the unknown. And it used to be cultivated in the region in Jericho and the Jordan Valley as part of the heritage, as part of the culture of the people. And also it's important First of all, because um, it's the climate is suitable for this kind of cultivations. Also, because of later it became a part of the heritage because of the importance in Islam and Christianity. Because of the climate change and lack of water and the high salty actually of water wells in general, and actually it's because of the climate change and also because of the occupation control over the water. Israel is controlling 100% of the water resources in the West Bank in general, but of course the Jordan Valley, including the Jordan River, which is supposed to be part of the water resources for Palestinian farmers and which used to be for centuries. And that's why dates was one of the indigenous types of cultivations. Unfortunately, later, because of the salty of water, this kind of cultivations loves salt water. And the typical traditional heritage kind of cultivations in the area used to be different types of vegetables to provide the local Palestinian market. But later, because of the salty of the water and the lack of permissions from the Israeli occupation to drill new water wells or deeper to get to fresher water, unfortunately, Palestinian farmers moved to widely actually to cultivate this kind of dates, which consumes a lot of water, and that unfortunately destroyed the soil of the land of the area in the Jordan Valley and increased the salty of the soil and the water. At the same time, that is also that forced some farmers to move to other types of cultivations which needs less water, or they move to greenhouses, and of course they will change the typical types of cultivations, such as some kind of external kinds actually of herbs, where they only use it for exporting. So it's not even helping the internal Palestinian market, which is supposed to be depending on our local economy or our local farmers, which is unfortunately connecting us more with the occupations market, and then of course more blackmailing the Palestinian people. And this what we faced recently, just the last 2 years. It was all the time, but the last 2 years after the war on Gaza, and actually it's also here in the West Bank, when they closed all the checkpoints and they started only by Jewish Israeli farmers and businessmen to enter the products to the Palestinian market. So I'm talking about controlling the daily lives of the Palestinian farmers, which is destroying the livelihoods of the people. Also, the climate change and, of course, the Israeli violations and lack of water or water insecurity destroyed the tourism in general. Jericho is one of the most beautiful, and the Jordan Valley, one of the most beautiful areas in the historic Palestine because of the diverse land. You can have the southern part, which is almost a desert, and the rest of the Jordan Valley is very, very green and beautiful area. But because of the climate change and water insecurity, the majority of the land dried, and that was a reason for a lot of people not to come again to the Jordan Valley and to move, I don't know, to other places. Unfortunately, more than 85% of the tourism sites are closed. Most of the people who were depending on tourism as their income are jobless now, or some of them forced to move to work in other mostly cheap laborers, and unfortunately the Israeli agricultural settlement. So water in general is in our case, is the core reason of inviting or encouraging people to visit the Jordan Valley. And of course, يعني I will talk a bit again about the importance of the religious areas. That's why actually Jericho is important, Jericho the city, but the rest of the Jordan Valley because it's very fertile and very rich, but unfortunately it's all controlled by the occupation. Here I could say that the problem is also that we are even the people who work in tourism or the Palestinian farmers are even prevented from using new mechanisms or technology to adapt with the climate change. We are witnessing daily house demolition, daily confiscation for properties, and even solar systems in the Palestinian communities. I would like also to add finally that, and I'm sure the people who love cinema or films, and especially the Arabic uh, um, uh, films and movies, they usually see what we say the Bedouin streams. The Jordan Valley is very rich with water springs and streams, but most of them are now dried because of both the climate change and the Israeli drilling of new water wells to pump the water to the Israeli outposts and settlements, which unfortunately.
Hamza, I'm sorry, I just need to interrupt you. We are running out of time, but thank you very much for highlighting the water insecurity issue, which is something that we did want to highlight. I'm very sorry, we are running out of time. So I'd just like to invite the audience, if anyone has any questions to ask, we can take 2 or 3 questions. We already have some hands up. Do we have a mic? Yeah, thank you, Anna. And if you could just mention who you'd like to
Sure.
ask the question.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Maher Azzatin. I lead the effort on sustainability within our company, not just here in Lebanon, but across the globe. I have 2 questions, and Antoine, actually, to you. You mentioned that this forum is a space for open dialogue and for us to discuss our thoughts. First of all, I want to thank you for the report. Although I'd like to say it's very informative, it is, but there are some discrepancies, and I'd like to highlight, and I'd like you to clarify a few things. So I'm going to get into my first question relevant to tourism on the trail that you showed on the map. I believe the trail, you guys are saying that the trail is being affected by climate change. Hence, there's a low rate of tourism, as far as I understood. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Not we are saying.
Okay.
Our research.
The research.
There's a consensus.
Right.
Yes.
But don't you think, Antoine, we need to take into consideration the geopolitical situation that exists in the region from the late 60s till today's date that's been affecting also tourism? I mean, why would anybody come from Europe or from North America, or so be it here from Lebanon, take their kids and family on that trail and risk themselves? I think the data, all right, I agree with the data. There's extreme weather and high temperature, water scarcity. I'm with you on that. But I think we need to take into consideration the geopolitical situation that affects this data. So that's something I'm not really sure whether you took it into consideration, which brings me to my second question. And I want to be very careful how I present this question. It's very important. So before I present this question, let me tell you about my personal life. I have a beautiful wife, 2 beautiful girls. I empower them. My wife, she's a full-time employee at one of the big 4 consultancies, and I'm sure you know who they are. And she leads the effort on human resources in the MENA region. The reason I'm mentioning this, because in the last 8 years, I've been attending events, climate change, whether it's in New York, Paris, London, or anywhere across the globe. One thing that pops, and it doesn't tick the, one thing that pops into the conversation, doesn't tick the box, is gender discrepancies. And I'm really bothered by it. I'm really bothered by the fact that they're pulling women into climate change and they're leaving men behind. I'm starting to get the feeling that only women will be able to solve the issues of climate change. And men, to be honest with you, they're more of an alpha male people. I don't know, we don't want to deal with them. And I disagree. I think with innovation, you need to include everything. We're not being fair to climate change. I think there's a problem. There is a problem, and it needs to be highlighted and clarified as why only women are going to be affected by climate change, not men. I mean, I have my own business.
Sir, if you could, yeah, if I could just, therefore, Antoine, would you like to take this question? If you'd like to answer the question of the gender discrepancy, or
First, thank you for both your questions. I think it's important to clarify some things, and when we conduct research and consulting, it's more or less the same. We worked to answer one particular specific research question developed either by the client or with the client, or in this case, a funding agency, which was AFRAT. The research question, which I also explained at the beginning of I showed in the slide, is what is the effect of climate change on community-based tourism? So, and as I mentioned in my presentation, our problems in Lebanon, they come from governance, they come from geopolitics, they come from economics. It's a very big spectrum of sources of problem, geopolitics. You know, if I want to go back, I'll go back to Sykes-Picot, which delimited the area and currently is preventing us from connecting our trails. I know the history of the region. I know the geopolitics of it. By answering one question on what is the effect of climate change on community-based tourism and hiking trails, this does not exclude or negate the presence of other factors affecting community-based tourism or hiking trails. So again, this was the scope of the research. We did not define the scope of the research ourselves. We were just answering the question in a scientific, methodical, systematic way, using participatory, of course, data collection methods. So that's in regards to the first question. In relation to the gender discrepancies, again, I think maybe there was a bit of a misunderstanding. We did not say, and I hope I did not say at any point, that only women are getting affected by climate change. Two things. First, as I mentioned, I said that the most vulnerable segments of our population, of our communities, suffer first and foremost the impact of any disaster. Take this to the Beirut port explosion. You will also see the studies showing that women, migrant workers, people with existing disabilities, any vulnerable segment, when it suffers through a particular shock, the shock is multiplied by the existing vulnerability. So, you know, and again, with the occupation in Palestine, we're seeing it. It's not only the women who are suffering through occupation, it's the entire Palestinian population. So now, why was there a slide on gender disparities? For two reasons. First, women consist more than 50% of the population. So when you have more than 50% that is systematically excluded from your community, from your economy, from your decision-making power, we believe it is the biggest disempowered segment of the society, and therefore it is worth putting extra attention to this particular point. Second, this was also in discussion with the funding agency and the partners who also were asking that particular question, and we helped them answer it. So again, by putting upfront one particular fact or comment or notice, this does not negate or exclude other facts. It's just at the end of the day, there is a scope, there are particular answers, particular questions which we answer. But you know, our world is quite diverse and suffers from a lot of problems. So yes, so thank you.
Thank you, Antoine, for the clarification. Can I take a quick and precise question, please, from the Anna? Thank you.
Hello, thank you for giving us the chance to be here. I'm representing AFDC. My name is Fadi Bouali. I would like to highlight a nexus of science, policies, and practice. I'm not gonna fall into semantic snares, but I don't know if we're talking about responsible tourism here or ecotourism, agritourism, because it has been always there. And in Lebanon, we are not well equipped at the level of legislation. I don't know if Zaina can correct me. It falls under the scope of protected areas law. Otherwise, there's nothing that can, let's say, guide ecotourism activities. If we are gonna, push or promote community-based tourism, and if it is not responsible, then we are making things worse. Recently, I worked on landscape, forest landscape management plan. In one village, there are 200 swimming pools in the forest. So, in your opinion now, how this study can inform policymakers, and because it is trying to bring a science evidence about something, and in terms of practice, what we have to do. I know, like at LMT, I know them, they have this mandate of responsible tourism, but everyone can, we see a lot of people on social media, they are promoting Lebanon in not, in a mass way, and they are not well equipped, or they don't have a certification. Now, recently, we suffered this problem in June, and we have a lot of people that they are, when it comes to safety. So this sector is not well, framed at the level of legislation, and who's gonna make all these things together. Thank you.
The question has been understood. Lara, I think you'd like to take it. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to take it, and then if we have time, maybe Zaina can clarify if I missed something. So definitely, I was not directly involved in the study, but nobody is trying to promote community-based tourism here, although it needs promotion. But we are not trying to promote it. What they are trying to do is to show that this sector is being affected by climate change. Now, community-based tourism, it includes several types of tourism. Ecotourism, is very specific to the protected areas, like you mentioned. So anything outside the protected areas currently in Lebanon cannot be named ecotourism. What we tried to do in the LDN project with the Ministry of Tourism and with the Ministry of Environment is to, and we did it, we elaborated the sustainable tourism strategy for Lebanon, and it is with the Ministry of Tourism, and it has specific objectives and specific guiding principles and action plans for 10 years, and it is called sustainable tourism, which includes, it goes beyond responsible tourism, it includes all the sustainability principles, and part of it is ecotourism, which is restricted to protected areas, as I mentioned. So definitely the ministry is doing its best to try to use the strategy and to come up with legal frameworks to really make the things more to promote better governance. But you know what was happening during the last 5 to 6 years in Lebanon, so it's very difficult to do. But definitely there is no promotion, and I welcome you to take a look at the sustainable tourism strategy, which was shared with everyone, including AFDC. So Sousan has it. You can ask her about it, and you can take a look and see. LMT was involved also, and you can see what are the trends. Definitely, we have problems on social media on people promoting, but I think during the last years there has been a lot of work by many partners trying to guide the media and guide the people in towards more sustainable tourism practices, especially in rural and mountainous areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Lara. We will, unfortunately, we don't have time for any more questions, but we will have a or during the networking session. We will have networking at the end. If you'd like to say, sure, a couple of them. Yes, sure.
ما بتفرق كان we can say it على اللبناني. أول شيء الوزارة أنا بشتغل بالسياحة البيئية السياحة الريفية بالديبارتمنت تبعي بس تعرفوا الوزارة بعد عندها شغل بينعمل كتير حتى على تقسيم الدوائر والمصالح بعد ما عندنا دايرة خاصة للسياحة البيئية لو climate change بس نحن عم نحاول بالموجود وبالناس الموجودة المتخصصة بيناتهم أنه نعمل شغل اللي هو هلأ الترندز الجديد اللي طالعين بيناتهم ايكو توريزم رورال توريزم وليتلي على الكلايمت تشينج عندنا كثير مشاريع عم نشتغل عليها ان كان مع اليو ان توريزم الورد بانك مع يو ان دي بي ومثل ما قلتي عن البروجي. هلا نحن عم نحاول بالموجود انت بتعرفوا السياحه هي قطاع خائن شوي يعني بيكون حاجين لنشتغل للسياحه موسم فجأة بيجي شيء بيلغي كل شيء بيلغي كل الحجوزات نحن عم نشتغل مع الديفاليوشن اللي صارت بالعمله والمصريات البادجت الصغير كنا نعمل كثير بروموشن ونركز على الايكو توريزم بس حاليا عم نحاول ننتقل هلا على الاي ماركتينج وعم نشتغل على كيو ار كودز هلا وزعنا على المحميات تنشوف اراء الناس بالمحميات وغير انه عم نشتغل على ليجيسليشن عمر بال فادي عم نشتغل على legislation عم نشتغل على كذا اذا بدكم تحديث مرسوم بالاخص تبع الجايدز يعني بدل ما يكون الجايدز بس في عندنا الكالتشرال هلا مفترض يطلع مرسوم جديد مع الجيد دو مونتاني وغيره هذا اكيد بالتنسيق مش لحالنا مع كثير انتيتيات بريفي اكيد منه درب الجبل وغير مؤسسات والوزاره اوريدي طلعت مرسوم بيوت الضيافه وهذا خطوه كثير مهمه من كذا سنه ترخيص لبيوت الضيافه الاقامه البديله alternative يعني عم نشتغل على كذا مشروع عم نحاول قد ما فينا نعمل بالموجود بس anyway حيلا فكره بتقترح من السيكتور بريفي نحن مستعدين على مشان هيك انا اليوم موجوده نقدر نتعاون سوا لانه لحالنا ما فينا ولحالكم ما فينا سوا يعني فينا نشتغل. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As I mentioned, we will be having a networking session in a few moments, so please do feel free to speak with the panelists or ask your questions. I would just like to invite Catherine Simonet from AFD to say a few words. Hello, Catherine. Or Cyprien from the AFD to say a few words.
Hello, yeah, can you
Oh,
hear me?
hello.
Well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I can start, and I guess Catherine will join us if she can.
Yeah. Can you hear now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. So sorry. Apologize, my microphone was not working. Thanks a lot, and sorry, Cyprien. So I jump on it. And,
go ahead.
Thanks a lot for the conversation, and thanks for inviting us on this exchange. It was really great to hear all this very dense conversation on the topic. From what I've retained of the exchange, and sorry, I'm not going to do a full a summary of what have been said. It was far too dense, but maybe some key topics. So first, the point that has been said at multiple times, and also on the in the chat about the context, the importance of the political situation, the context that are more important than the climate change. I think that on this aspect, climate change can be seen as a factor that exacerbates the tensions and the situation, but of course, basic services and needs are quite critical in some situations. So I just would like that to highlight that this is a very common point, and the literature has showed that the literature on climate security has demonstrated that adaptation can deliver very important development co-benefits, and vice versa. you can have a focus on development that is delivering adaptation co-benefits. So I think it's important to not put in contrast these two dimensions, but more like opportunities to work on the two objectives together. And the second point that research and literature has demonstrated, and I think Antoine also highlighted it, is that adaptation can also be a good entry point, a good factor for more social cohesion, more work on interdisciplinary between people, between communities. So I think that these two dimensions are quite critical, and at AFD we are working on it. The second point of the conversation I've not noted is the importance or the recognition of differentiated vulnerabilities. This question of who are the most important, the most vulnerable, how to target it, and the fact that there is vulnerabilities that are different depending on the context. And the last point is about the climate justice. I've noticed the climate justice dimensions, and I would like to make a follow-up on it because I think this idea of climate justice is echoing well also the international agenda on climate. This year, we are waiting for the operationalization of the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage. There is a lot of expectation on the use of this fund, how it will get operationalized. As you may know, it has been accepted, but not yet operationalized. And I think that there is a need for this operationalization, and especially I would like to highlight the question of the access that has to be discussed in the next board. If LDCs and seeds are highlighted to get a specific access to the funds, the transitional committee has also agreed to access to national entities directly and to community and vulnerable groups. So we do not know yet how this access to community and vulnerable groups will operate, but I think that is something that is important, and we need to have a look and a specific attention in the next discussion of the FRLD board. The second point on the international agenda that is really connected to what we have listened today is the impact on the global goal and adaptation. There is now a lot of discussion on the research for impact, the fact that the importance is not only finance, but it's also the impact and the outcome. And I think that all the presentations or results you've demonstrated is showing the aspect that the financial dimension may be, or the financial engagement might be disconnected to the impact, and you can deliver a lot of efficient results. So this is also an interesting link with the international agenda I would like to highlight. And as you may know, the global goal and adaptation will be set up at the end of the year, and we expect to get some indicators that are useful at the local level. From AFD perspective, all of this is echoing well, or is quite related to what we are doing with our new planet roadmap. So as you know, AFD has a climate strategy, and the new strategies that will be endorsed over this summer is called the planet roadmap, highlighting the importance of the nexus between environment and climate. And the experience and the discussion you had about the role of conservation, preservation on adaptation, I think are really useful and completely in line with this new focus that is joining climate and biodiversity issues. On adaptation, more specifically in this roadmap, we are working on the continuum between adaptation, disaster risk management, and loss and damage. So again, this question of justice, this question of adaptation for supporting development co-benefits are really at the heart of this of our new roadmap. The importance for targeting the most vulnerable, and I'm really interested of all the methodologies you've developed to get a bit more in detail and characterized these differentiated vulnerabilities. This is a work that at AFD we need to do more and more in terms of in our project in order to get a bit more in granularity of our activities and targeting the most vulnerable population. And last but not least, our strategies is also focusing for the next 4 years on the locally led adaptation. And this is really, I think, in line with what you've presented. So the locally led adaptation is the recognition of that communities can lead adaptation and should lead adaptation decisions, but that doesn't undermine the importance of national scales, of national integration, but more like to get more visibility of the population. So AFD assigned the 8 principle on locally led adaptations. We are working really closely with NGOs and your organization on implementing such kind of activities. And now and for the next 5 years, our roadmap on locally led adaptation aims also to work on how such kind of local initiative can work at scale. So how can we put such kind of initiative at scale and embedding the results we have demonstrated at a certain level for this to work with national authorities and or regional authorities when it's relevant. So again, I can't cover all the discussions, but I would like to really thank you all the exchanges and maybe pass the floor to Cyprien. We have a key program that is called Adaptation. That is our flagship program for adaptation in AFD, and Adaptation is just starting in MENA. So I'm sure you would be interested to have a bit more concrete example on how that works in your region. Thanks again for the conversation.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine. I can just say a few words. It won't be long. But basically, I can present myself. So I'm Cyprien Younes Lutin. I'm the regional coordinator of the Adaptation program for the Middle East. I'm based in Amman. And so the Adaptation program, it's the flagship program of AFD, providing technical assistance for in the field of climate adaptation in various regions, including the Middle East, but also Sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, and the Indian Ocean. Maybe a few words on this program is that it provides funding for research activities, capacity building activities, as well as support to project preparation. So projects that would be funded by the AFD in collaboration with the EU, which is also co-funding the Adaptation program in the Middle East, and or the Green Climate Fund. So this program mainly targets, I would say, public stakeholders, but I think there is a lot of interest to also connect your work, the work of civil society stakeholders with the public ones in the region. So Palestine, Jordan, and Lebanon, we have identified activities in the water sector, health sector, and agriculture sector that are starting at the moment. Once again, very interested to follow up on your work and see how this could connect. I can also mention that more specifically in Lebanon, there are already projects of AFD that work on ecosystem restoration. There's one program called Parsifal, which is closing at the moment, but that was very much involved in forest restoration, and another one also on flood risk prevention. And so, these are links that may be made with your work. One last thing is that this program should last until, Adaptation from 2024 until 2027. So I already had a few discussions on your initiative, but let's see how it goes and where links could be made at some point. So yeah, once again, thank you, and thank you for also setting the context and presenting your study and how it connects with the more critical challenges of the region, of the 3 countries, and how there's a need to, when you engage in climate adaptation, to not overlook also structural vulnerability issues, and how materials can be a way for more sustainable community-based tourism. Thank you.
Cyprien, thank you, and to Catherine for joining us and for your words. I think on that note, I'd just like to thank our panelists for their interventions, to Lara, to Antoine, to Hamza, and to Hakim. And on that note, we will be having a networking session. So please do stay and connect and ask your questions. Thank you very much.
And first of all, thank you, Lisa, for the moderation. It was really nice having you here. I would just also like to thank again Leila, Anna, Ghada, and the entire NCC team who put everything together, the LMTA team as well, the technicians here. And again, thank you for everyone who showed up. We're really happy to have so many people with us today. Thank you.